Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for coming to the Safety Center's June webinar, which is the ITE Vision Zero Virtual Toolbox. We're going to get started now. Looks like we have most of you joining us as a group of just one, but we do have several groups of more people. As always with our webinars, if you are attending in a group, if you could please send your names and email addresses to our email, info, I-N-F-O, @ruralsafetycenter.org. This will allow us to send you out a survey, and that survey is how you obtain a certificate of completion for the CEUs. So again, the email address is info, I-N-F-O, @ruralsafetycenter.org. It also looks like we have a great representation of people joining us from different organizations today. It looks like we have about 10% of you from the federal DOT, 15% from state, 25% from local, 5% tribal, 5% from other federal, state, or local agency, 5% from first response agencies, 20% from educational institutions, and private consultants. So that's a great turnout for today. It also looks like, as usual, the Western U.S. is capturing the largest percentage today with about 40%. And then we do have about 27% from the Southeast, 16% from Northeast, and about 5% from the Midwest. And most of you, as always, are joining us by computer only. Again, we will let you know if you do have any issues with the audio on today's call. If you wouldn't mind dialing in, the phone number can be found at the top left of your screen. And again, that's only if you do have any audio issues. Every once in a while there are some issues with the Wi-Fi and the audio. Pass over to our presentation at this point. And we have just a few more webinar logistics to discuss. Today's webinar will be about an hour and a half long. It is being recorded and will be available later on our website. For quality of our recording, all of the phone lines except the presenters have been muted. At any point, you can type any questions that you have into the chat pod on the left-hand side. When we do stop for question and answer periods, we will answer those questions, and there will be 2 question and answer periods today. If you are listening on the phone, we do ask that you please mute your computer, as you will have feedback if you have both lines open. And again, just a reminder for our presenters that while you're not speaking, if you could also mute your phone lines. On the top right-hand corner, you will find 4 arrows that are pointing outward. That button will allow you to see the presentation full screen. This will be very important towards the end of our presentation today, where we'll be sharing the website. Up here where this green arrow is, and that way you'll be able to see the website a little bit better. It will appear small if you're on a laptop and you do not use these buttons. So we'll remind you again towards that section of the webinar. Also, we wanted to mention that at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll find the handout pod. In this, you can download today's presentation if you're interested in reviewing it further in the future. And lastly, we would ask that you please complete the follow-up surveys that we'll be sending out. There will be one coming out today that talks a little bit about today's presentation, the presenters, the information that you learned, whether or not this webinar has been useful, if you plan to use the information. And that will allow you to also check the boxes for receiving a certificate of completion and also the CEUs, which are available through Montana State University. In about 3 months, you will also receive another survey that's a little bit shorter, only has 5 questions on it. And that survey will ask you whether or not you've taken the information that you have learned today and passed that along to anyone else, or if you have implemented it in any way. So if you went to the website and found some resources after hearing today's presentation, those are the types of things that we're looking for. We'd like to thank our co-host for today's webinar, the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We appreciate them coming today and giving this webinar for us. And we do have 3 presenters today. We have Dr. Stephen Lavrenz from the Institute of Transportation Engineers. He is a technical program specialist for ITE. In this role, he also oversees the Technical Services Program for the National Operations Center of Excellence. Dr. Lavrenz works on a number of projects at ITE involving active transportation, context-sensitive design, and rural road safety. He is the staff liaison for the ITE Vision Zero task force and led the initial development of the Vision Zero portal. His research background is in traffic safety, operations, and infrastructure management and has a number of committee involvements and peer-reviewed publications in these areas. He received a BS and MS in civil engineering from Iowa State University and a PhD in civil engineering from Purdue University. We also have today Andy Kaplan from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and also an ITE Vision Zero Technical Working Group member. Andy currently serves as the chair of this ITE Vision Zero Technical Working Group, as well as a member of various safety-related NCHRP panels, TRB committees, and professional societies. His day job is the assistant manager of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey's Agency Operations Center. The AOC is a 24/7 consolidated, streamlined operations center that acts as a TMC, coordinates between the Port Authority's various multimodal transportation assets and regional transportation partners, and is leading innovative partnerships and data exchanges with Google, Apple, and Waze. And our third presenter will be Amber Trueblood from the Texas Transportation Institute. Amber has an extensive public health background focusing on environmental health and injury prevention. She has a doctorate in epidemiology and environmental health from the Texas A&M University School of Public Health. Currently, she is employed as a post-doctoral research associate at Texas A&M's Transportation Institute. Since joining TTI, she has been involved in several projects, including a comprehensive motorcycle crash analysis, the development of an interactive crash modeling system, and the development of a rail safety database. In addition to her work with TTI, Dr. Trueblood is an adjunct professor at the Texas A&M University School of Public Health, where she teaches an introductory course on environmental health for undergraduate students. We're very thankful that the 3 of them are able to join us today. For today's webinar, once you have completed it, we hope that you'll be able to use the information in ITE's new Vision Zero website and Safety Resources Toolbox. The Toolbox showcases best practices, analytical techniques, policy guidance, and communication and educational tools for Vision Zero, where the goal of zero traffic fatalities among all road users, and to make these easily accessible to practitioners. To achieve that webinar goal, you will learn the following: how to summarize the new ITE Vision Zero website, to state how the Safety Resources Zero Toolbox was created, to summarize what is in the toolbox, to list how the toolbox is categorized and how to search it, and lastly, to restate how the toolbox is applicable to a local and rural audience. And at this point in time, I'd like to pass the presentation over to Stephen to begin. Stephen?
Okay, thanks a lot. So we got my introduction already. So I'm going to spend most of my time today giving a little bit of introduction into the Vision Zero website and give some background and context on the Safety Resources Toolbox and kind of how that came to be as part of ITE's Vision Zero Task Force, at which point I'm going to hand it over to Andy and Amber to take a little bit deeper dive into the toolbox and show you some of the cool things and the cool resources that you can find as part of that toolbox. So, first of all, I mean, let's just start from square one with Vision Zero. Like, what is Vision Zero? I realize a lot of folks, you may be working in this area a little bit. I think this is still a newer concept for a lot of practitioners, though, where there's not always that deep understanding of what is Vision Zero and how is it different than, say, traditional safety engineering. So the core tenet of Vision Zero, and I have a definition up here on the screen, but the core tenet is that no loss of life on public roadways is acceptable, and that to eliminate fatalities, we as transportation professionals need to bear significant responsibility for ensuring user safety. it's no longer enough to simply rely on drivers themselves improving their behaviors. If we really want to achieve a goal of significantly reducing and eliminating our fatalities and serious injuries. So for ITE, what this really means is that systems-level engineering strategies are recognized as having the most impact on the elimination of fatalities and serious injuries. And I'll get into kind of an example of what I'm talking about with this on the next slide. I do want to say, though, while it's important to consider this Vision Zero strategy going forward, and this is something that ITE is certainly championing, it's not a replacement for traditional safety engineering. Rather, it's a critical component of a comprehensive safety program going forward. So, other things, the 4 E's of safety that many of us have learned about in our classroom environments and textbooks and everything, that being engineering, education, enforcement, and emergency response, all of those factors are still important to a public agency. With that said, where opportunities are available, ITE is going to, going forward, specifically encourage the adoption and implementation of Vision Zero's systems-level approach wherever it can. And so, if we get into the next slide here, what does that mean in practice? So, a little bit, how is that different than what we're doing now? And so, I mentioned these systems-level solutions, and really, a lot of this has to do with engineering our roadway environments to be more forgiving or to be more adaptable to drivers not always behaving or operating their vehicles as we would like them to. And so one of the goals we try to do in engineering that roadway environment is to make the crashes avoidable from the start. So we do what we can to stop collisions and stop those crashes from even happening. And so within an urban environment, it's easy to visualize that in terms of, well, if we have cars and then we have pedestrians and bicycles, well, we can separate, those different groups of users, on different types of systems. And we can do similar things in a rural environment. But the important thing, though, especially in the rural environment, is if we can't completely make those crashes unavoidable, then we at least need to make them survivable. And so, where that comes down in practice and kind of thinking about things a little bit differently, I've included a couple of just basic examples here on the screen. On the left-hand side is, a roadway sign for, slippery conditions when driving. So when the road is wet, you might see this sign, and it's meant as a caution to drivers to pay attention to the roadway conditions and do what they can to operate their vehicles in a safe manner in that compromised roadway environment. That still relies primarily on the driver. And it's still important to have these kinds of signages in place, but inevitably you're going to have cases where either the driver's not paying attention or the conditions are beyond their control. Some of those collisions and some of those run off the road, for instance, in a rural environment, some of those instances are still going to occur. And so where Vision Zero comes into play is then we start to look at other strategies where if we can't completely avoid those kinds of collisions or those kinds of compromising incidents, then we need to make them survivable. And so that's where you see, one tool that's popular in more of a rural roadway environment is the cable median barrier. This has been adopted on a lot of interstate segments around the country and more non-interstate segments, particularly with higher volume roads that have a grass median. And so, in a case where despite warning signs, the driver still were to go off the road, we can stop that crossover collision, that potentially fatal head-on collision from occurring through the use of a cable median barrier that will arrest the vehicle and either stop it completely or at least deflect it back towards, to some extent, the roadway that it was operating on, to not necessarily completely avoid a collision, but at least now we're making it a lot less severe, side swipe or maybe even a property damage only collision versus the head-on fatal collision that previously could not necessarily have been avoided. And so this is kind of what we mean in the systems level solution and in the the thinking differently context compared to traditional safety engineering. This is also especially important when we think about context-sensitive solutions are a big part of Vision Zero. And so, again, I mean, Vision Zero up to this point, I think, has been a bigger push in the urban environments where you have a mix of different types of users and traffic environments. And a big part of that is speed management. And hey, let's slow down the vehicle so that if a collision with a pedestrian or a bicyclist does occur, at least it's survivable. And I think realistically, that's just not always feasible. In fact, in most cases, that's not going to be feasible in some of the rural operating environments where you have high-speed roadways. It's you're never going to slow your interstate traffic down to 25 or 30 miles per hour on some of these isolated stretches of road. It's just not feasible. So that's where we need to think about some of these other context-sensitive solutions that can speak more specifically or address more specifically the types of users that are operating in these environments. So where this all plays out within ITE's push for Vision Zero. So back in 2016, our board of directors decided that ITE, we wanted to aggressively pursue programming and education and information around this Vision Zero initiative. And so in summer of 2016, we launched a Vision Zero task force. The task force itself comprises two different entities. We have a steering committee where we involve a number of external associations and other organizations who are pursuing safety research and programming. So, for example, we have AASHTO, we have Federal Highway Administration, other groups such as that on the steering committee to kind of help us give a 20,000-foot look of where we're at in terms of Vision Zero and in terms of safety as a transportation profession overall, to help us and to help ITE specifically target its message a little bit better. We also have a technical working group, and the chair of that, Andy Kaplan, you'll hear from him in a few minutes. The technical working group is tasked more specifically with developing actual resources and technical products as part of this Vision Zero initiative that not only our membership, but anyone within the transportation profession can utilize as they approach this question of Vision Zero and safety programming. So, as I said, we have a number of partners from public, private, nonprofit organizations. We have a strong membership base of volunteers that are helping out with this effort. And we're also working very closely, not just with Vision Zero, but other programs as well, such as Towards Zero Deaths and the Road to Zero Coalition, who are pursuing very similar goals of eliminating serious fatalities or serious injuries and fatalities. So what the first product of this technical working group and this task force is what we're doing, what we're presenting on the webinar today. That's the Vision Zero website and the Safety Resources Toolbox. That product was launched at the end of April 2017 at our Texas district meeting. And a couple of photos you can see on the slide here are from that meeting. And the top slide on the right-hand side is Robert Wunderlich, who's also works with Amber at TTI. And with the Safety Resources Toolbox specifically, he's been managing that project and helping to coordinate the curation of resources that have gone into that toolbox. So I already mentioned a little bit the Road to Zero Coalition. They're a big partner with ITE in this effort and this goal to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries on the roadway. And so hopefully most of you have heard of the Road to Zero Coalition. If not, this is an effort sponsored by the US DOT and led by the National Safety Council. It's a very large effort. A lot of players in this. There's over 200 members in the coalition. ITE is a founding member, and we're on the steering committee. So we're happy to be very actively involved with that, and we are having lots of great discussions as part of that effort. The coalition itself has a couple of different items in its agenda. So one of the things it's pursuing is a series of these Safe Systems Innovation Grants. So those grants are tasked with providing $1 million over several years for organizations, associations, and agencies to pursue innovative approaches to systemic safety within their networks and within their environments. And so the first round of that funding was actually just completed about 2 months ago. And if you go to the Road to Zero Coalition's website, you can get information about which projects were funded and which organizations are responsible for developing the products of that funding process. They've also been working with the RAND Corporation to develop a 30-year zero fatality scenario. So effectively that's saying, we have this goal of zero fatalities and zero serious injuries. How realistically, how are we going to get there? What are some of the strategies that we need to be pursuing? Who are some of the stakeholder groups that we need to be working with? And setting a goal 30 years from now to be able to meet this objective of zero fatalities and serious injuries. And then the joint safety positions is a big part of this. So just being able to connect all of these different organizations and coordinate these messages around the importance of Vision Zero and how this is something that's worth pursuing. We should not accept as a cost of doing business fatalities on any of our roadway environments. Is a huge benefit of belonging to this coalition. So they have a website. I encourage folks here to check that out if you have time. You can link to that from our Vision Zero portal as well, which I'll get into now. So the Vision Zero website itself, like I said, we launched this back at the end of April. This is the URL is on the bottom of the screen here. It's ite.org/Vision Zero. It's pretty easy to get there. So I encourage folks to go and check it out. There's a number of different things that you can access from this Vision Zero portal. So we've got the homepage, obviously, that will provide some background on Vision Zero and why it's important and how it compares or differs from traditional safety engineering. That's really most of what I've been talking about up to this point, is you'll get that information on the homepage. You'll also be able to see the information about the Vision Zero Task Force itself. And so you can see the membership on our steering committee and some of the different organizations that are represented, as well as the membership on the technical working group, who, as I said before, was the group that was really tasked with developing this safety resources toolbox. Another thing I also want to highlight today, we have information on our Vision Zero website about Vision Zero at the ITE Annual Meeting. So coming up at the end of July into early August, we have our annual ITE Annual Meeting. This year we're going to be doing a joint meeting with the Canadian District of ITE. This is going to be held in Toronto, in Canada. And one really cool thing about this year's annual meeting is we're actually going to have a Vision Zero pathway, which is going to include a wide variety of technical sessions and programming opportunities for attendees to participate in. And so it's going to be a mix of different podium sessions, ranging from general discussion about this concept again about how is Vision Zero different and what are some of the strategic ways of thinking that we need to change compared to what we've done in the past. It's going to range from that down to, we also are going to have some success stories or some examples and some case studies from agencies and organizations that have pursued Vision Zero. What have they learned? What's been the outcome of that pursuit? And so a good range of topics. And then we'll also be having a poster presentation where individuals will be able to present research and practice a little bit further that they're doing along the Vision Zero pathway. So another opportunity or another item that's accessible from the Vision Zero website is what we're calling OnDemand Resources. And so these are a mix of different things. We've got, for instance, a couple of podcasts on there that we've done so far. So we did, the end of last year, we did a couple of podcasts, one with Mats Akbilin, is with the Swedish Transport Administration. It was really the group that started the Vision Zero effort over in Sweden back in the late 90s. And so Mats worked with us to do this podcast and talked about kind of the concept and the thinking behind Vision Zero and how it's really been promoted and applied in Sweden. We also, a little bit more recently, had a podcast with Deborah Hirschman from the Road to Zero Coalition. She's the chair of that coalition, talking a little bit more about the coalition and how it relates to Vision Zero and how how important this partnership with ITE and other organizations is. And as we do more of these podcasts in the future on this topic, these will be added to the website as well. We also have a couple of on-demand webinars. These are webinars that have been held in the past or will be held in the future. Recordings of these will be accessible here, as well as through the ITE Learning Hub, whose logo I've included in the bottom left of this slide too. And so the first one of these webinars, we did a similar last week on May 23rd, sort of introducing the toolbox and the website. That will be accessible, and then, of course, the recording from this webinar, we're going to try to see if we can get that accessible on the website as well. And then finally, ITE Journal, articles and content. So ITE Journal is our major professional publication. We have had a number of articles from the launch of the Vision Zero Task Force up until now. And even before that, pertaining to Vision Zero and some of the specific projects and items that not only ITE but also ITE partners are pursuing within this space. So all of those articles can be accessed from this part of the website. And as I said, as we continue to develop more products and resources in this realm, we'll definitely continue to build out this part of the web page as well. So I also mentioned the webinars. So as far as upcoming events go, we also have some other upcoming events here. So we have a 9-part Safety Fundamentals webinar series that we're just getting ready to kick off. And as more information on that series becomes available, we'll be including it on this part of the website. And part of that will be including a few webinars specifically on Vision Zero, ranging again from the conceptual, all about Vision Zero, what is it, and how do we need to be, pursuing this at a high level, down to more examples and case studies of agencies and organizations that are pursuing Vision Zero practices in their day-to-day work. And then, partner webinars and events. So today's webinar, we've had this highlighted and advertised on this part of our Vision Zero website, and I'll put out the ask right now. If other folks attending here have similar events or Vision Zero related items or events that they would like to share, please send them to us. We'd be more than happy to help promote those through this part of the website as well. The one thing I'm really excited to talk about, just because it's launching today, actually. In fact, in about 2 minutes, we're going to have a posting going up on a couple of our media channels for ITE, is this Vision Zero Video Analytics project. And so this is a project that's initiated by the University of Washington, Microsoft, and the City of Bellevue, Washington. The basic idea behind this is to leverage existing camera infrastructure initially at signalized intersections to identify high-risk locations for motorized and non-motorized transportation users. And so as part of this algorithm, we're relying on volunteers to manually tag video clips from these different camera installations so we can help train the algorithm to identify pedestrians versus bicycles versus cars and other types of transportation users. So you can go to this part of the website and access video clips and participate in that tagging process and help us to build out and refine this algorithm that can eventually be used to automatically identify high-risk crash locations. And so, like I said, the first focus on this is in more of an urban environment, but I can very easily you can imagine extensions to a more rural environment where you may have camera installations on your interstate segments or other other roadway environments. Just being able to leverage the existing infrastructure that's out there is going to be a huge factor in improving safety and really getting towards that 0 deaths and serious injuries going forward. And then finally, a couple of things to wrap up before we get into the toolbox itself. The related safety links. So this is where you can go to see all of the different partners that we are working with in this Vision Zero task force and as part of the development of the Toolbox and the Road to Zero Coalition and other similar groups. The individual resources themselves, so like publications and best practices and things like that, those are going to be contained in the Toolbox itself. But you can at least get to the organizations through the related safety links section. And then there's the contact us. I mean, one big thing I want to emphasize with this product, it's not finished. It's definitely a work in progress. So we have, say version 1.0 launch at the end of April. We're actively updating, we're actively maintaining this. So any additional, any feedback, any additional resources as you start to explore the toolbox that you don't see in there, really any input at all, please, we'd love to hear from you. You can send that directly to visionzero@ite.org, and we'll be sure to try and incorporate that as best we can into future updates of the website and the toolbox. And then finally, last but not least, is the toolbox itself. And this is where I'm going to hand it over to Andy and Amber to get a little bit more into this explanation. But this is a really cool resource. This is, I mean, right now, the initial build, we've got over 700 resources available through this toolbox. It's a searchable database. I will say that it is more than just Vision Zero resources, and so that's why we've named it the Safety Resources Toolbox. Vision Zero is important, and like I said at the beginning, it's a critical element of a safety plan going forward. But there's other safety resources out there, practice-ready resources and tools. While they may not necessarily be Vision Zero specific, there's still important things to consider in your day-to-day practices, and those can be found through this toolbox as well. So let me, okay, let me wrap it there, and I'll turn it back over to Jamie and then Andy and Amber. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Stephen. We are going to stop now and take some questions. I see that there are some in the chat pod that we'll get to in a minute. For any of the rest of you that has questions, you can go ahead and put those into the chat pod now. We do have a couple questions for you guys first, though, so I'm going to move us over to a poll break. Our questions for you are, which of the following are offered on the ITE Vision Zero website? Is it the Vision Zero Task Force information, podcasts, webinars, ITE Journal, Vision Zero Video Analytics, Safety Resource Toolbox, all of the above or none of the above? Or I don't know, I don't remember. And the second question is, which of the following is true? Have you heard about the ITE Vision Zero website? Have you visited the website? Have you heard about the ITE Vision Zero Safety Resource Toolbox? And have you used the new resource toolbox or none of the above? So we'll give you a few seconds for those. One of the questions that came in already was, I would like to have the opportunity to market this effort in Florida, and do you have any objections with sharing this material with others? Joe, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on both the Safety Center website and on the ITE Vision Zero website within the next week or so. So you'll have not only the recording to this webinar, but also the handout, which is the PDF version of these PowerPoint slides. And then I'll let Stephen go ahead and discuss anything else that may.
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. I mean, we want to get this, this website and the toolbox are open to everybody. I mean, we want to get this in the hands of as many people as we can. So by all means, please promote and share with your membership in Florida.
And he also is asking, I guess there is a upcoming statewide meeting next week where he'd like to share this information. So we can definitely get you the PowerPoint presentation version of these versus the PDF version that you can use for that, Joe. Mm-hmm. One other question that it looks like may have partially been answered already by you, Stephen, in your presentation, but they're wondering about the Vision Zero program and if you guys are taking any of the ideas from European countries. He said you mentioned Sweden, but were there others?
Yeah, so, I mean, like I said, Sweden is really kind of the founding entity for the Vision Zero ethos and the philosophy and some of these practices. I don't know specifically that we have a lot of resources in the toolbox right now that speak to some of the practices on, from other European countries. I think that's definitely something that we would want to consider in future updates of the toolbox. So I would encourage you to take a look there first and see if you can, and see if there are any in there, and maybe, Amber and Andy could perhaps speak to that a little bit better than myself. But if you don't see something in there that you think should be included, or you come across something that another country is doing, please send it to us. We'd love to have it and consider it for inclusion.
And at this time, I am going to end our 2 polls and go ahead and broadcast those results. Stephen, you should be able to see these if you'd like to go ahead and talk about them.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself again. Okay, so which of the following are offered on the Vision Zero website? So 83.7% said all of the above. Good. I think I tried to talk about everything, so I'm glad that that came across well. And then which of the following is true? So this, I'm actually pleasantly surprised at some of the results of this. It looks like just over half of the participants have heard of the Vision Zero website. Hopefully it wasn't just today, but if not, that's totally cool too. And then looks like just under a third have actually visited the Vision Zero website. So that's encouraging. A lot of opportunity for improvement, obviously. And then, 48% have heard of the Vision Zero Safety Resource Toolbox, and then 15% of you actually use the toolbox. So that's great too. So I imagine for that 15%, you may have, some feedback even from that initial use. I would love to hear it. And for the rest of you, please, after this webinar, go check it out. It's a pretty simple, easy tool to use. I mean, we tried to make it as accessible as possible. And I think that'll be a good segue then into Andy and Amber's presentations.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. We do have actually a couple more questions for you.
Oh, yeah.
The first is more of a fact than a question, but someone did let us know that Australia and France also have some great ideas and resources, along with Sweden, for anyone who is interested in looking more into those.
Great.
But the additional question we have for you is, are you promoting driverless vehicles to reach the Vision Zero?
Well, we are. I mean, driverless vehicles are it's an important, I think, an important long-term component of the strategy to achieving, the Vision Zero, zero deaths and fatalities. I will say that we are a long ways off towards truly being in a society or an environment with driverless vehicles where we really realize the full safety benefits of that kind of a technology. So while we are promoting it, I think we're also promoting some of those practice-ready tools and techniques that can be used like right now. The cable median barriers that I mentioned earlier are an example of that. Those are, I think, more of the kinds of resources that you'll find in the toolbox itself. But we are working in that driverless vehicle space with groups such as the VDOI Deployment Coalition and Federal Highway Administration and other related agencies as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And at this point, we will go ahead and turn the presentation over to both Andy and Amber. I believe Andy's going to go first.
That's great. Yes. Thank you. And I know you guys have previously given our introduction, so I'll jump right in. Just a little bit of background to everyone here about Vision Zero. And I know a lot of times the idea of Vision Zero it sounds ambitious. It sounds bold. And a lot of times, especially in the engineering community, we get questions about, is that realistic? A lot of times as engineers, coming from ITE, we like to set goals that are achievable and we use them to measure performance. And a lot of times when we talk about is Vision Zero achievable, we often hear things like, well, there's things that we can't control. People are going to be people, behavior issues. Vehicles are going to fail, vehicle maintenance and design issues. And we can't change all of that through what we do as engineers when it comes to roadway design and maintenance. And while that's true, the idea of Vision Zero is coming from a more broader perspective than just the engineering. And the idea that behavior change can happen by engaging other elements of government and other elements of roadway owners and operators and cities and states that are not necessarily part of departments of transportation. Things such as at a city level, doing things with fleet management to ensure that vehicles are safe. And in New York City, doing things like side guards that prevent the city fleet from injuring and striking pedestrians. And working with departments of public health, Department of Education, parks, all these other groups that really have always had an interest in safety and transportation, whether it's getting kids to school or safely accessing parks to recreate in. It's been something that's important, but not necessarily an effort that's been coordinated. And the resources and time that roadway operators and owners and governments put in haven't necessarily always been coordinated. So that's a lot of the idea of Vision Zero. And someone mentioned to Steve the idea of connected and autonomous vehicles. And I think while Vision Zero, recognizes the opportunity there, oftentimes it's more about recognizing that if we set a challenge, sometimes the exact pathway will get figured out. And that very likely is part of the pathway to Vision Zero. But again, what Vision Zero does is it takes a higher level where we're setting the goal of really what's ethical, what's right, and what needs to be the direction that we go in, and the goal that we need to achieve as a society. And puts with that, institutional agency and group alignment, coordination, and resources to take that holistic approach. It doesn't necessarily chart out every step of the journey, and you'll see in urban environments that have really been pushing Vision Zero forward, they've been making a lot of it up as they go. And in states and a lot of more rural local environments, we've been doing a lot of techniques and things that are very positively impacted safety, but not necessarily in the same coordinated way. And the toolbox that we create recognizes that, especially the state level Towards Zero Deaths, which I'm sure a lot of folks have heard of, has been setting a similar goal and putting a lot of engineering countermeasures behind it. And the toolbox that we created incorporates a lot of that, a lot of the research that has been funded by the states, and a lot of best practices, both in design, but also in other areas like education, enforcement. So, when we talk about what the role of engineering is, design is still a key component. Engineering is still a key component in reaching zero. But, and what we do as designers, as engineers, as roadway owners, operators, maintainers, is not new. We've been doing safety for a while. So, again, the toolbox attempts to try to provide access to the best state of the practice and of comparable areas throughout the country. So, we recognize that it's not complete, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks on this call. By the nature of being on this call, you have an interest in safety and are probably doing some great things in your jurisdiction that we may or may not be capturing. So we'd love to hear from you, to email visionzero@ite.org with more best practices that we can continue to grow and fill out the toolbox. But when we need a new solution, the toolbox attempts to be a one-stop shop to kind of narrow down to find other best practices, whether it's from research, states, or comparable peer groups that really apply to the specific problem that you may be having, whether it's drunk driving or run off the road type crashes, which I know are definitely more prevalent and a concern in rural communities, but to try to have resources there that are beyond just engineering. But as we said, Vision Zero is still much more than what we do in the toolbox. And a lot of it is probably more than the organization, like a Department of Transportation or Public Works that we may find ourselves working in, and finding ways to engage with other resources that may exist in your communities is definitely more than a valuable attempt to implement Vision Zero, and it's much more than just what you'll find in the toolbox. But the first step to moving forward and kind of getting on this journey to reach that long-term goal is to see what we have around us as tools, and that's what the Toolbox attempts to do. So with that background, I'm going to hand it off to Amber, who's been really one of the leaders, herself and Robert Wunderlich. They've really led the actual development and organized the curation of a lot of the resources. And I'm going to hand it off to you, Amber, to walk everyone through how to navigate the Toolbox.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amber. I work at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute, actually under Robert Wunderlich. It's been a great opportunity developing this toolbox, and everyone involved, again, is really looking forward to seeing what happens in the next phases, since we are hoping to keep on building the resource. So you might wonder, what is the toolbox? Hopefully by now you've gotten the idea that it is a resource of resources. So that's funny to say. So it's a collection of resources that ultimately are designed to aid transportation professionals. It is developed with the Vision Zero in mind. However, we do include other safety ideas, so general safety improvement, countermeasure implementation, and anything that's beneficial for transportation professionals. One of the things we do try to keep are resources that are electronically accessible, and you'll see why we include links to all of the resources so that they're readily available for you to use. The tool's quite easy to get to on the ITE website. Here's the hyperlink if you want to start playing with it or after you have it easily accessible. So the toolbox is designed to be as simple as possible. We want you to answer a few questions and get to the resource needed. Now, this is a basic search that we're hoping to improve in the future, whether depending on feedback and all that. But right now, the basic questions that we have: what is the source of the safety resource? So that means, is it FHWA? Is it a university? Is it Texas A&M that you're looking for? Is it ITE? Who are you looking for? What is the mode of travel that you're focusing on? So is that goods transportation? So are you looking at CMV related, motorcycles, walking, driving? And then the next question, what is the road safety pillar? So that is looking at education, EMS, evaluation, things like that. And then region of the world. So we do include other areas besides the United States, since there's a lot of good resources coming from around the world. So we break that down to Asia, Australia, Canada, Europe, United Kingdom, United States, other. Then the next is topic. So what is the topic that you're interested in? Is it countermeasures, a specific crash type? Are you looking at socioeconomic disparities? That's toward zero deaths, Vision Zero resources. And so that's the topics. There's a huge list of them, so that's just a few of them. And then you can even narrow down resource type, which an academic myself I enjoy, because a lot of times I already know what journal articles are out there, but maybe I want a PowerPoint, a report, or a book that I can't as easily find using, Google Scholar or Scopus or any of those databases. And so using this, I can say I want a PowerPoint. And that's what we're hoping to provide here, are those resources at your fingertip. So you answer those basic questions. Now, let's say you only care about the topic. You want all countermeasure resources. For the rest of the questions, you would just leave those blank, and I'll show you here in a minute what I mean by that. But you would just select countermeasures, and our tool will produce all resources that hit countermeasures. Okay. So let's just quickly try, I'm going to do a screenshot demo, and then we're going to try to go live. I did a screenshot just in case the live demo goes a little off. Wait, back to the PowerPoint. Can we go back? Sorry. We're almost there. Okay, so quickly a few screenshots, and it does look like the live demo will work. So what we're going to do is try to find all FHWA resources that cover roadway departure crashes in the United States. So I broke it out into the questions just so it's a lot easier. So the source, FHWA, mode of travel, driving. Pillar would be none because there aren't any in the scenario. Region, United States. And then the topic would be crash types because roadway departure is a crash type. In the future, we're hoping maybe we'll have sub-crash areas so you can actually get just roadway departures, but right now you'll go to crash types. So step one, you're going to select the source of the safety resource. So that's here. I would click FHWA, scroll down, and the next thing you're going to see would be mode of travel. Here you'll again select driving since that's what we're looking for. Keep scrolling. And so instead of scrolling, we're switching slides. And region, our road safety pillar, we'll skip because there's nothing there. And we get to region of the world. And again, we're looking for United States, so we would check. And what's really nice is you can select multiple regions if you want, United Kingdom, United States, or let's say you want anything outside the United States, you could easily select that there. Step 4 is selecting the topic. So again, we want crash types to get those roadway departures. And then resource type, I left all of them because I just want to see what we have. So when you get to the very bottom, you'll click Find Resources, and this produces a list of resources with hyperlinks. Now these hyperlinks take you directly to the resource. So as you guys know, hyperlinks stop working eventually. So if you do find a hyperlink that doesn't work, you'll contact the Vision Zero email, which I'm going to give out here in a little bit. But the goal is the links work. We check them before they go up, but again, technology. But this makes it very easy. You can take this list, you can put it in Excel. So if you're working on a large project, put it in Excel and you'll easily have all of the resources related to your topic. And so for someone that does literature reviews on a weekly basis, I love this aspect of the tool because it automatically directs you to the web page and it automatically, you can copy and put that in Excel quite easily. Okay, so those were our screenshots. So let's go ahead and switch to the online demo now.
And while we are switching over, I do want to remind you again at this point in time that in the top right-hand corner are 4 arrows that point out. At this time, it would be very beneficial if you would click on that and make the presentation full screen so that the webinar will, or the website will show up in bigger font for you.
Okay, so when you get to the Vision Zero webpage, this is, hopefully that's what you guys are seeing on your end, is just a welcome general description. What is it? What is the purpose? Again, we put in that it's a dynamic resource and we're hoping to update it on a regular basis with new topics, resource links, and functionalities. So again, keep that in mind when we're going through everything today. We do have a basic usage instruction that essentially says to obtain tailored listings, you'll answer one or more of the following questions, and then again, just click the Find Resources button below. Now, as we're going, if you do happen to see a missing resource, you'll email the Vision Zero at ite.org email that's been given out. I'm going to give it again at the end. And that's where you go if you're like, well, there's a great resource coming out of France, but I don't see it on here. Let us know. Or maybe you click on a hyperlink and it says invalid because they've slightly changed the URL. Let us know so we can get that fixed as soon as possible. So to get started, we would just, what is the source of the safety resource? Let's do ITE. Mode of travel, we'll keep all of them. And then road safety pillar, we'll keep all. Region of the world, we'll go down to United States. And then topic, let's do countermeasures. So one tool or one resource matches back to that. And so we'll just click over and see, whoop, oh, that's embarrassing, the one is invalid. We will fix that hyperlink. Let me write that down real quick so we can do that. And that's embarrassing because I practiced this morning, but, you know, life happens. Okay, so since that we had an issue, let's come back here. We'll do FHWA, United States countermeasures. Let's see. So when you get to the very bottom, FHWA, the exact same search, I just switched from ITE over to FHWA. What we do see is a little bit longer of a list, and again, you can easily copy this over, put it in Excel, and then these links will take you to the resource. I'm a little scared to click on one, but we're going to try so I can show you, see? Here's a lovely one, and it walks you through everything. And so some of these resources on the side will be entered separate depending on how the resource was entered. If not, you'll be directed to the main page. And again, my favorite part is that you can easily copy that, put it in Excel, put it wherever you want, and you can easily manage a lit review. So let me go back over to the tool and we'll see if we have any questions. Okay, so how to get started, yes, so we do have some basic instructions, and then the Vision Zero, let's answer after my last slide. So what are the next phases of the toolbox? So ultimately we're adding more resources. So on a daily basis we get emails saying we really recommend this resource. We're going through resources that didn't make it on the first round because we need the second person to look at the curations. So that means they possibly fell into multiple categories, and we want to make sure they're going into the correct ones so they were flagged for review. So it's a process, but we are getting them added quickly, as quick as possible. So if you see a missing resource, let us know. There's a good chance we're working on it already. Another thing, if you're interested in curating, so curating is very similar to the form you see. It's done in Qualtrics. There's a little bit more questions asked about the resource. You enter it, and then based on that, we're able to get it uploaded. So if that's something you're interested in, please, again, let us know. You can email visionzero@ite.org. The time commitment per source, we say, takes on average about 5 minutes. And so if you have a free half hour every week and you want to do a few resources, that's something we would love for you to help with. Or if you have an idea for improvement, so maybe something on the website doesn't work or you see a category missing, let us know. And again, that's that visionzero@ite.org. And just keep in mind that this is a process and we are going to continually improve this website. So thank you guys for everything. I guess let's see if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Amber and Andy. And at this time, we will move over to our poll break, as we do have a couple of questions for the audience. But the audience can feel free to put their questions into the chat pod. I see there are a few waiting there that I'll read out in a minute. And as we move over to this poll break, that chat pod is still on the left-hand side if anyone else has questions. This is the last point in time to ask questions of our speakers, so if you do have one, please feel free to put them in there. The questions for you guys. First, the ITE Vision Zero Safety Resources Toolbox is a dynamic resource that will be updated regularly, and you can submit resources for inclusion to visionzero@ite.org. True or false? And the other one is the ITE Vision Zero Safety Resources Toolbox is searchable by many categories. Which of the following is not one of these categories? Is it resource source, mode of travel, road safety pillar, region of the world, topic, resource type, or keyword? And we'll give you guys just a few minutes to go ahead and fill those out. I believe this first more fact than question we have probably relates to Stephen's topic. So Stephen, I'll read this out for you if you'd like to address it. It
Sure.
says if 90% of the errors are driver errors, the only way to get close to the Vision Zero is to accommodate driverless vehicles. This way we do not have to design for people under the influence. Do you have any thoughts on that, Stephen, or any of our other speakers?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just go first. I mean, that's a good point. You know, at the same time, though, I think that also speaks to some of what Andy was saying about, you know, needing to do a better job of engaging, you know, folks outside the transportation profession. So there may be some other, you know, there may be some alternative strategies that we can pursue besides driverless vehicles to you know, get a lot of those drunk drivers off the road. Maybe it's policy, maybe it's technology in the vehicles. Besides driverless vehicles, I think you're right. I think that driverless vehicles can definitely solve that. But I mean, the reality is that particular solution is not on the near-term horizon. It's something we're all working towards, but I think it's a balance of that combined with, you know, ready now, you know, practice-ready tools and solutions to effectively address those kinds of problems. I don't know if Andy or Amber, you guys have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is Andy. I think that the way we look at the problem right now, where, you know, yes, drivers are human and therefore drivers error because we as humans error, and unless we remove the human from that, we're not going to remove human error. But it doesn't mean that we can't create roadway systems that will allow the human to error without it resulting in a death or fatality. Obviously, there are economic and resource questions associated with that, especially in a rural setting. But I think driverless vehicles will remove human error if and when we get there. But that doesn't mean we need to wait for that to happen to try to design and to try to create roads that minimize human error and allow human error to happen without resulting in death.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you, Andy. Amber, did you have any thoughts on that as well?
I actually have very similar thoughts to both Stephen and Andy, so I don't want to be repetitive. So we'll just keep it at what they said is perfect.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead. I closed both of our polls, and I broadcast the results, so you should be able to see those at this time. Amber, if you'd like to talk about those.
Okay, for question 1, the ITE Vision Zero Safety Resources Toolbox is a dynamic resource that will be updated regularly. Everyone, all 100% answered true, so we did not lose anyone to afternoon napping, which is good. That's fantastic. So everyone got that. And then the second poll question, the ITE Vision Zero Safety Resources Toolbox is searchable by many categories. Which of the following is not one of these categories? So we had about 5% say the source, travel, 8% say the safety pillar, 5% say the region of the world, 2%, 3% say topic or resource type, and then 70% said keyword, with the correct answer being keyword. So as of now, you can search the source, the travel, the pillar, the region, the topic, and the resource type. But as of now, we do not have a keyword search option. However, who knows where we'll be in 3 months. So keep your eye, pay attention to it because we might have that in the future. So what questions did we have?
Yes, so a couple of questions that you got, Amber. The first one is, does the toolbox include a how to get started discussion, or what are the first steps that should be taken to get started?
So yes, if you get on the toolbox, there's a usage instructions area, and it just quickly says how to obtain a list of safety resources, what you'll do, and then it also includes the email if there's any issues, if you notice a missing resource, and again, it's just a Vision Zero, so there is a little instruction area on the toolbox.
Okay, and the next question, while the ITE Vision Zero website does discuss this, does the toolbox itself discuss the importance of the Vision Zero champions and who would make the best Vision Zero champion?
So the toolbox provides resources that exist to support implementation. Having champions for Vision Zero is probably a question outside the toolbox, and I think the answer is really that everyone can be a champion of Vision Zero. The reality is a lot of times it takes an elected official to put the resources and make a policy commitment, or an electoral body to do that. But it doesn't mean that we as practitioners can't, sometimes we're thrown into that and we're asked to implement resources to do that. But it also doesn't mean that we as practitioners, short of a Vision Zero policy, who are working to improve safety, still will hopefully find value from the resources in this toolbox to implement, improvements in safety in what we do day to day.
Thank you, Andy. We do have a few more comments that came in as well on the user error discussion that we had a little bit ago. One person suggested that the use of Uber is a possible way to address these impairments. And someone else said that we should recognize that 27% of user errors are interactions with the infrastructure. This is the part of the errors we should be able to eliminate. The other errors are likely behavior-related, which is a NHTSA responsibility. We should emphasize the 27% interaction error. So that was a comment from one of our audience members.
Yeah, and I fully agree with that comment, but I would challenge that user, that commenter, that it's not a 27% is us and others is NHTSA. We need to make sure that the NHTSA side of the house and the behavioral programs are part of the we, which is challenging. But I think that's part of really the vision and the concept that hopefully we're able to work together to address both sides of that.
That is very true. And we do have a couple other comments regarding the same thing as well coming in the chat pod. So someone said addressing the behavior issues can include infrastructure issues through awareness training, and that it takes policy changes, engineering design, and enforcement to bridge the gap between current trends and the goal of driverless vehicles. So thank you, everyone, for all of your comments and questions on the subject. I'll just put it out there for another minute. Does anyone have any final questions before we move on with the presentation? And for our three speakers, do you have any final words that you'd like to say as well about any of the questions or comments that have been coming in on the chat pod?
I just wanted to thank the National Center for Road Safety for putting this together, and also thank the audience and especially the commenters for your attention and engagement. It's been a good opportunity and a good conversation.
Yeah, this is Steve. I mean, I'll second that too. I mean, it's great to have the opportunity to talk about this to this audience, and I'll just, one more time reiterate that Vision Zero is a critical element of a comprehensive safety strategy moving forward. But it's not that we abandon what we've been doing, but rather we add on to it. And I think a large part of that is doing a better job of using the tools and the practices that we have now. And that's where the Safety Resources Toolbox can really shine in linking practitioners to those resources, and then hopefully get them thinking about, to the point that Andy's made a couple times, reaching out to some of those other groups and associations and thinkers outside of the traditional quote-unquote transportation profession. So it's a brave new world when it comes to Vision Zero, and ITE's looking forward to helping it evolve going forward.
Thank you very much. So to wrap up today's today's webinar for learning outcomes. In this webinar, you have learned to summarize the new ITE Vision Zero website, to state how the Safety Resources Zero Toolbox was created, to summarize what is in the toolbox, to list how the toolbox is categorized and how to search it, and lastly, to restate how the toolbox is applicable to local and rural audience. A few final thoughts for you guys. Our upcoming Safety Center webinar is on how to address roadway safety issues for ATVs and other off-road vehicles. That will be on July 12th. And as always, all of our webinars have been archived on our website, so this one will be available there in about a week, but all of our previous ones are also there. We do have 2 training videos available at this time, one on road safety audits on tribal lands and one on road safety culture. And I do want to thank all 3 of our speakers again. It was a great honor to have ITE here to discuss their brand new toolbox with us. So thank you, Stephen, Andy, and Amber. We do appreciate that. And for anyone in the audience who has further questions, their email addresses are available on the screen right now. And I know we tried to reiterate this with the poll question, but I do want to reiterate it again. The toolbox is going to be continuously updated. So as Amber said, if you see any resources that are missing, please make sure that you provide those to ITE. The way to make a great toolbox is with all of your knowledge and with all of the resources that you guys know, and you may know of something that someone else doesn't. So please provide that information to them. And thank you one more time to Stephen, Andy, and Amber. We appreciate your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.